Hello and welcome to Global Eye. I'm Parikshit Luthra. The top story we're tracking this evening. US President Donald Trump called Prime Minister Modi and wished him for Diwali. Indian Ambassador to US Vinay Quatra met Trump at the Oval Office and extended his greetings to the president. Indian origin CEOs, including CEO of Adobe, Shantanu Narayan, were present at the celebrations addressing reporters. Trump confirmed that he spoke to Prime Minister Modi and they have a very good relationship. He reiterated that India will not be buying much oil from Russia, and Prime Minister Modi wants the Ukraine war to end as much as he does. In a social media post, Prime Minister Modi said, and I quote, "Thank you, President Trump, for your phone call and warm Diwali greetings on the Festival of Lights. May our two great democracies continue to illuminate the world with hope and stand united against terrorism in all forms." End of quote. Meanwhile, both nations have had positive talks on the proposed trade deal. Sources have said that India and US are discussing final contours of the trade agreement and are looking for an ambitious trade deal. Joining us now to take this forward is Mukesh Aghi, President and CEO of US-India Strategic Partnership Forum. Thank you for joining us on the program. Mr. Aghi, where do you think we are with the trade negotiations so far? Does President Trump's repeated statements and claims that India will cut back on purchase of Russian oil put India in a difficult spot?
Well, it does. I think you have to look at India is a sovereign nation, an independent nation, a proud nation, and it is going to buy its energy where it's cheaper, efficient, and so far Russian oil has been cheaper. And this was in concurrence with the US administration when Biden was the president. So I think from that perspective, India will keep on buying Russian oil or any other oil which basically is cost effective. Now, keeping in mind the geopolitics and trying to understand and support President Trump, you would see also a slight reduction, at least a momentum going in that direction, because at the end of the day, you just don't want to take the president head on publicly. So I do believe that it is in the interest of India to find that balance.
Right. On the US side, what is the United States seeking at this juncture? Are we done with the negotiations so far? Has the deal been agreed upon, or are we yet to reach a landing point?
I believe they have made a lot of progress. In fact, the Indian trade negotiator just left Washington, D.C. back to Delhi itself. And the contour of the deal is more focused on everything written, so nothing changes as we move on. And I believe that if the Prime Minister goes to the ASEAN summit and meets with President Trump, then hopefully they can announce some kind of agreement to get the deal concluded.
Right. Now, speaking about tariff and non-tariff barriers, originally in the month of June and July, the deal that had been agreed upon, and this has been publicly known, was a deal which set an average tariff around 13 to 14%. Is that acceptable to businesses on both sides? And do you feel that the landing point of the average tariff now would be higher or in that range, according to you?
Well, anything below 50% is the right direction and acceptable to the business community. And what we are understanding is at the moment, the discussions are more around 15%, and it could be between 15 to 20%. That is still better than 50%, which India is penalized. And it is impacting India's exports. I mean, say if you look at last month's data, the US exports from India went down by 12%. So I believe it is in the interest of India and the United States to conclude this deal. The challenge is not just trying to wrap up the deal. The goalpost keeps on moving also, and that makes it a little challenging for both sides to come to understanding as to where we can make a stop and close the chapter and move on.
Right. What do you think has changed as far as the last few months are concerned? We were looking at a point when things had hit rock bottom with the India-US relationship. Things seem to have revived and are now on a positive trajectory. Is there any more demand that the United States has made of India?
No, I think you have to understand the temperature has come down. There have been calls between the Prime Minister and the President wishing each other's Diwali greeting, birthday greetings, and talking about, congratulatory message on Gaza peace deal and hoping that Ukraine war also settle down. So I think what we are seeing is basically a positive reinforcement coming in from both sides to make sure that the relationship does not slip any more downward. And what we have seen last 60 days is that the relationship is moving in the positive direction. And I've always said that the relationship between the two countries is not just about tariff. It's about geopolitics. It's about bigger, broader trade itself on the technology side, people to people. And we have over 300,000 Indian students studying here, contributing to the local economy itself. So I would say that, yes, tariff was highlighted, but that will come to some understanding because both countries realize that they are democracies. They need each other's in a very turbulent world. And we have strong leaders on both sides which would like to steady the ship between the two countries.
Right. Do you expect H-1B to be a part of negotiations and any trade package? We've seen how the U.S. Chambers of Commerce has actually taken the U.S. government to court over the changes in the H-1B regime.
Well, you have to understand that the $100,000 fee put on H-1B is for 1 year only. It has to be decided again next year. And what we are seeing is it is not impacting companies who want to hire, they are hiring, and the low-end jobs are moving to offshore itself. So I don't think H-1B 100,000 fee is an issue. But overall, I think the Congress needs to look at how do you basically reform the immigration issues, because we need the talent in the United States. We have shortage of skilled workers. When you look at the startup system, almost 60% of the AI startups in the US today have some kind of an Indian connection itself. So the H-1B workers are innovating and making US companies more efficient on a global basis.
Right. Finally, do you think India and US will be able to adhere to the October-November deadline as far as the trade negotiations go? Because India is yet to make up its mind whether Prime Minister Modi will go for the ASEAN summit or not. But on a larger framework, within the timeline of October-November, as was originally being discussed, do you think such a trade deal can be arrived at?
I believe so, because both sides are so close to it. Now, you also have an ambassador who is close to the president. And I think one of the first accomplishment would be is closing the trade deal. It serves U.S. interest. It serves India's interest to basically close the trade deal. And I think what we're seeing is the sentiment is improving. The temperature has come down. Both sides are supporting each other on a geopolitical arena itself. So I strongly feel that there'll be a lot of effort to ensure that the trade deal closes by November timeframe.
Right. In terms of US-India businesses, could you give us a sense of the recommendations that are being made by the chambers? Is there a request to try and wrap up this negotiation, have a deal as soon as possible? Has any kind of recent recommendation gone from US ISPF to the White House?
Yes, in fact, we have written directly to the president, encouraging him to basically close the trade deal, because I think what we are seeing is tariffs have become more of an irritant rather than basically a strengthening the partnership. Because the relationship is much bigger, much broader between the two countries, and India can play a very pivotal role. And you look at India is playing a pivotal role when you look at GCCs in India. Roughly, we have about 2,000 GCCs in India. 60% are US companies, and they're leveraging the Indian talent to innovate. In the last 2 years, we've seen almost 300,000 patents being registered through these GCCs. So I think it is in the interest of the United States and also in India to close this. And we have written to the president encouraging to move it in the right direction.
Right. What do you think holds back the deal right now? Because from what we understand that the negotiations have been in advanced stages, both sides are thinking on how best to position this deal for their audiences. What do you think is really left, and what is the last hurdle that we need to cross before we reach the finish line?
Well, we have basically a difference in style. President Trump is looking for headline news on a trade deal, whereas on the India side, we are still focused on nuts and bolts. And what happens is basically that's where the disconnect is. If you look at day 4 yesterday, Prime Minister of Australia was here. He negotiated a rare earth deal, a small deal of $8 billion, but President personally got involved. So I think it's important to understand that President wants some kind of a headline news to announce the deal. And that's where I think we're missing the packaging. And that's what needs to be worked upon.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Aghi, for joining us on the program with your perspective on where we are with the India-US trade negotiations, despite the positive commentary from both sides. Time for a short break, but coming up, with US President Trump saying that India will stop buying oil from Russia, how will India balance its relationships with both Russia and the United States? A special discussion with Kanwal Sibal, former Foreign Secretary, when we return. Welcome back to Global Eye. While President Trump has claimed that India will stop buying Russian oil, statistics show that this may be more of a pressure tactic in the ongoing trade negotiations than a reflection of any significant policy change, according to latest data sourced from energy tracking agency Kepler. There is no visible sign of a reduction in Russia's oil imports. Indian import of Russian crude is 1.8 million barrels per day in October. That's an increase of 250,000 barrels per day compared to September. Russian crude accounts for 34% of total imports and still comes with compelling discounts. Given India's balanced foreign policy stance, any blocking of Russian imports seems unlikely, according to Kepler analysts. Meanwhile, India's oil imports from the US have increased, but the upside is limited due to higher outright and transportation costs. So how should India navigate this tricky situation? Joining us is Kanwal Sibal, former Foreign Secretary. Ambassador Sibal, thank you very much for joining us. Is this making it very difficult to have a trade deal with the United States? Donald Trump repeatedly saying that India has agreed to stop buying Russian oil, or they will cut back very significantly. They'll wind it down. But, you know, oil tracking agencies say that this is more of a pressure tactic in the negotiations. Reality is quite different.
Now, the thing is that Trump has been saying this now how many times? I've lost count, that India must stop buying Russian oil, or India has agreed to stop buying Russian oil, or India has agreed to reduce buying Russian oil. It's a constant refrain. Now, when you keep saying the same thing over and over again, it ceases to be even a pressure tactic, because the other side then comes to the conclusion that this is being said far too often and is making it very, very difficult, in this case, our side, to actually reach some kind of a pragmatic decision on this matter, because it has been so highly politicized. Now, it is not a matter of a trade deal. This is not trade between India and United States. We are willing to buy more oil from United States if the price is right. And as it is, we have increased our offtake of US crude and we can even do more as we go ahead, based on market-driven forces. So our purchase of oil from the United States can be part of a trade deal. But our oil purchases from Russia, a third party, can't be part of a bilateral trade deal between India and the United States. It doesn't make any sense. This is totally politicizing the issue with very different objectives in view, to create a rift between India and Russia. More so, President Putin is coming here after 3 years for the annual summit, and there is no way that India should in any way not make the atmosphere of the visit less congenial than it ought to be. We should do everything to keep the atmospherics positive. And it's not only that, when the visit takes place, it has to produce results. Otherwise, where's the sense of having a summit with a partner like Russia? And when at the end of the day, after he comes here, we don't achieve actually, notable results. Now, those notable results have to be in the field in which Russia has the capacity to meet our needs. And that is oil and natural gas, our investments in their energy sector, defense, acquisition of defense material, fertilizers, coal, and things like that. Now, all this can be construed as fueling Russia's financial capacity to continue the Ukraine war. I mean, you can stretch the argument as much as you like. So Trump has created needless obstacles by his habit of just speaking too much and needlessly, and in a sense, acting on the global stage to show that he is fully in control. He can bend the will of other countries as he likes, and that everybody is ready to please him. He has been spoiled by the deal he had with the European Union and Japan and South Korea, and he thinks he can extract the same kind of deal from India. Now, from our point of view, yes, both countries should come out of the deal thinking that they have gained something. The US should gain, we should gain, which means it should be an equal and fair deal. It can't be a one-sided.
Master Sibal, right. You're right in saying that possibly US wants to break the India-Russia relationship for the long term. But is this just about India and Russia? Because our energy purchases from the US have gone up 60% year on year. They will possibly touch $12 to $13 billion by the end of 2025. And by the end of this fiscal, it could well touch around 24 to 25 billion US dollars. Is this just about energy, or is this also about the India-Pakistan conflict and India not acknowledging Trump's role over there? Because Trump, when he speaks about Russia, Ukraine, he also speaks about how he has brought several conflicts around the world, India, Middle East, Pakistan, all to an end.
Well, yes, when you can't decipher what another person is saying, and then you have to understand what could be his motivation, then you look at all reasons why he might be taking an irrational position. And clearly, therefore, his new love fest with Pakistan comes to mind. Now, it is true, you are right to this extent, that initially, when he wanted India to applaud him for having brokered the ceasefire and opened the door to him for getting the Nobel Peace Prize, and we did not oblige when Pakistan did, he was piqued. There's no doubt about it. And it is quite possible that he decided to punish India with an additional 25% tariffs for the reason that you are mentioning. And since then, he has continued in this vein by praising Field Marshal Munir, how he loves the Pakistani Field Marshal, even when the Pakistani Prime Minister is present, suggesting that Shehbaz Sharif is just stepping in on behalf of Field Marshal Munir, whereas the real person should have been the Pakistani Field Marshal to be on this occasion in Sharm el-Sheikh. You're probably right that this might be on his mind, but again, he has now said this 30, 40, 50 times. So what's the value of saying this time and again? I think there is, it's not polite to say it and not nice to say it. I think there is some problem in in the manner in which President Trump handles America's affairs and his foreign policy, and strutting too much on the global stage, constantly to draw attention to him and project himself as the winner in all situations, and therefore, and in that process, insulting people, the way he insulted the British Prime Minister at Sharm el-Sheikh, and of course the European leaders when they came and met him to discuss the Ukraine conflict. So that is his habit. Fortunately, he's been kind to our Prime Minister. He's not said anything personal against him, which shows that there is a way out for us, that if we can solve his other matters and remove those irritants, his basic thinking and approach towards India is animated by a positive feeling towards the Prime Minister. So there, right, hopefully, we can build on it in the future.
All right. Ambassador Sibal, I'd also like to understand from you that will India now have to come up with some clever diplomacy in order to arrive with a trade deal with the United States, considering we've done whatever we could? You know, multiple sources say that we've given them a good deal. You know, from January onwards, we've made concessions on bourbon whiskey. We've made concessions on automobile tariffs, which have been reduced from 100 to 70%. People, and those, and especially those in America, tend to forget that. We've done away with the Google tax as well. So we made all the right noises, and the Prime Minister has praised Trump's effort in Gaza. He has said that we are united in fighting against terrorism. So we're doing all we can. But do you think now we'll have to do something which is very different, some very clever diplomacy, something that Trump wants?
I don't think we have much scope to do that. On agriculture, on dairy, our Prime Minister has spoken to the Indian public very clearly that in no circumstances he is going to sacrifice the interests of our farmers and our milk producers, our dairy producers, and our fishermen. So I think on that, in that area, there is not much that we can do. Perhaps a little tweaking here and there in terms of buying some amount of corn for feeding the animals, for animal consumption, and not for human consumption. But soybean, I don't know. That also some can be bought for animal consumption. So some small thing, some quota-based imports can be made. There's talk about allowing the import of, again, quota imports for high-end cream cheese from the United States and things like that. But that won't satisfy him. Remember when Sergio Gore came here and he met the Commerce Secretary, he talked about Indian investments in the US. Now, he has that in mind because the South Koreans promised $350 billion of investment, and now they actually are extremely upset at the manner in which this issue has been dealt with by the United States. The Japanese promised $500 billion. The Europeans promised, I forget the figure, I think $2 billion or something like that. So he wants Indian companies to invest, including pharmaceutical companies. Apparently, we tell them that, look, our companies can invest, but the cost of production in the United States will be much higher than the cost of production in India. So how does it help you? But I don't think they go into detail. Trump has some kind of broad thinking with regard to what he wants, and he thinks that the tariffs are an extremely powerful weapon because the draw of the American market is such that nobody wants to be excluded from it, and therefore he can bully others to accept what he wants. But India is not dependent on the United States in the same way as Japan and South Korea and the European Union are. We are not dependent on the United States for our security. We have more margin for maneuver, though, of course, the US is our most important partner, and we would like to actually get rid of the issues that are preventing the relationship from moving forward and deepening. That we would like to do, but it can't be on the basis of what Trump wants. It has to be also on the basis of what we can reasonably give to the United States of America. So this tussle will go on, and I hope something can happen. I think they're waiting for some kind of a decision by Trump, because the deal as such, whatever the deal, that is on his table. He has to say yes or no, and nobody is certain which way he will go. But if he goes the right way, then maybe Prime Minister can decide to go to Malaysia, and there can be a meeting with President Trump. Personally, I am against the idea that the Prime Minister should meet Trump, without an agreement on a trade deal first. Otherwise, it'll become very controversial and there'll be direct pressure on the Prime Minister. These things should not be negotiated at that level. Trump wants to get into this business himself, but that's not the way other leaders should do, and especially our leaders should do.
All right. Thank you very much, Ambassador Sybil, for joining us with that perspective. So let's see what happens in the days to come. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of Global Live. Thank you for watching. Goodbye. No.
Hello and welcome to India Business Hour. I'm Shireen Bhan. The headlines that we're tracking for you this evening. President Trump dials Prime Minister Modi on Diwali, reiterates the claim that India will not buy Russian oil, says Prime Minister Modi wants to end the Ukraine war as much as he does. Sources say both sides have had positive negotiations on a proposed trade deal. Russian missiles and drones strike Ukraine, killing 6 people overnight, including 2 children. This comes hours after the White House appears to shelve the proposed summit between President Trump and President Putin in Hungary. US Vice President J.D. Vance meets Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu in Jerusalem as a fragile ceasefire in Gaza remains in place. Palestinian authorities accuse Israel of blocking air supplies. Israeli military strikes Lebanon, killing an alleged Hezbollah commander. Airbnb aims to be the Amazon for services, says CEO Brian Chesky, as the company launches new social features. Chesky says India is a big bet for the company. It has a long growth horizon in the country. That's an exclusive. Frothy is an understatement, says Airbnb CEO Brian Chesky when asked about AI valuations. Also says Silicon Valley has become more political, divided and mature in the last 17 years that he's lived there. Venu Srinivasan reappointed to the board of Sir Dorabji Tata Trusts for life. Sources say all trustees unanimously support the reappointment of Merli Mistry to the Tata Trusts board as well. If approved, Mistry will also become a lifetime trustee. Government frames draft rules to combat deepfakes as synthetic content impersonating prominent personalities flood social media. The proposed rules make it mandatory to label AI-generated content. Fugitive diamond trader Mehul Choksi set to be extradited to India. A court in Belgium rejects his petition and rules the charges against Choksi are serious enough to justify extradition. A thick hazardous smog blankets large parts of North India after Diwali fireworks. Air pollution in Delhi touches 15 times the limit prescribed by the World Health Organization. Well, our markets, of course, shut in India on account of Diwali holidays, but a mixed picture across Asia. Stocks in South Korea hitting a record high, even as China and Japan saw modest profit booking. Markets across Europe and the US are largely seeing a quiet day of trade, with stocks reacting to earnings reports. The Dow and the Nasdaq hit record highs yesterday and look set for a day of consolidation. So that's the global market action for you. We're, of course, shut on account of Diwali. Gold prices extending their decline after recording their steepest daily fall since 2020. In the last session, the prices were weighed down by signs of easing US-China trade tensions and a stronger dollar index. Investors also locked in profits from the bullion's recent record rally. So a breather there coming in for the gold rally. The top story that we are tracking this evening: President Trump calling Prime Minister Modi, wishing him for Diwali. The Indian ambassador to the US, Vinay Quatra, met Trump at the Oval Office, extended his greetings to the president. Indian origin CEOs, including the CEO of Adobe, Shantanu Narayan, were present at the celebrations. Addressing reporters, Trump confirmed that he spoke to Prime Minister Modi and that they have a good relationship. He reiterated that India will not be buying much oil from Russia and that Prime Minister Modi wants the Ukraine war to end as much as he does. In a social media post, Prime Minister Modi thanked President Trump. I quote, "Thank you, President Trump, for your phone call and for your warm Diwali greetings on this festival of lights. May our two great democracies continue to illuminate the world with hope and stand united against terrorism in all its forms." End of quote. Now, this is the fourth phone call between the two leaders since President Trump imposed 50% tariffs on India.
I love the people of India, and we're working on some great deals between our countries. I spoke to the Prime Minister Modi today, as I mentioned before, and we just have a very good relationship. And he's not going to buy much oil from Russia. He wants to see that war end as much as I do. He wants to see the war end with Russia, Ukraine. And as you know, they're not going to be buying too much oil. So they've cut it way back, and they're continuing to cut it way back.
Well, that's President Trump. Sources say trade negotiations between India and the US have been positive. Parikshit joins us now with more. Parikshit, we understand both sides discussing the final contours of that bilateral trade agreement. What's the latest?
Well, yes, we have seen positive negotiations between India and United States on the trade deal. Having said that, there are final contours of the deal which are still being worked out by both sides. And a political consensus would be required at the highest level. Currently, India and US are also discussing an expansion of the trade partnership between the two countries. India's energy imports from the US are already up 60% year on year. And there is a feeling that by the end of this fiscal, it would touch around 24 to 25 billion US dollars. Having said that, can India really stop purchase of Russian oil, as Donald Trump is hinting? According to energy tracking agency Kepler, this is more of a pressure tactic than a reflection of any change in policy stance. Now, as far as India's import of Russian oil is concerned, it currently, in the month of October, stands at 1.4 million barrels per day. 34% of India's oil imports are coming from Russia. It has increased over September by at least 250,000 barrels per day. So Russia's exports to India of energy continues as it is. Kepler analysts are of the view that India can reduce energy purchases from Russia, but that would be a token amount, maybe around 100 to 200,000 barrels per day. When it comes to India's imports from the United States, they have gone up significantly. They currently stand at around 299,000 barrels per day. And this is likely to increase to about 400 to 500,000 barrels per day. But as far as the India-Russia energy partnership goes, it is unlikely to change. And there is going to be practically no possibility of India stopping purchases of Russian oil altogether. Having said that, both sides have set a deadline of concluding a trade agreement by November. Let's see if we can adhere to that deadline and have a deal by December.
All right, Parikshit, many thanks for joining us. At least 6 people, including 2 children, have been killed in Russian missile and drone attacks on Ukraine. A kindergarten was hit in Ukraine's second biggest city of Kharkiv, and emergency power outages were reported nationwide. The strikes took place hours after the White House appeared to shelve a planned summit between President Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin. The White House statement saying a summit is not imminent came after Moscow rejected calls for an immediate ceasefire. Ukraine's military attacked a Russian chemical plant and both continue to trade fire in the eastern borders. US Vice President J.D. Vance met with Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Jerusalem. Now, during a joint press conference, Vance said that there were challenges ahead in terms of disarming Hamas and rebuilding Gaza. As part of a US-brokered ceasefire deal, the American Vice President reiterated that he is optimistic that the ceasefire will hold. Netanyahu said a strong Israel serves America's interests in stabilizing the Middle East. Meanwhile, Palestinian authorities claimed Israel is blocking the supply of aid into the Gaza Strip. Israeli military also claimed an attack in Lebanon, saying it killed a senior Hezbollah commander. From geopolitics to business, Warner Brothers Discovery is open to sell all or parts of its business. The home of HBO and CNN has initiated a strategic review in light of unsolicited interest it received from multiple parties. Warner Brothers said it plans to split into 2 entities, and that remains on the table. The report suggests that Warner Brothers turned down a $60 billion takeover offer from Paramount Skydance. According to a CNBC report, Comcast and Netflix may also be among interested buyers, so that could be a big deal in the making. In global earnings, streaming giant Netflix meeting street estimates in Q3. The company cited an ongoing dispute with the Brazilian tax authorities for the weaker than estimated results. Revenue rose 17%, boosted by membership growth, pricing adjustments and increased ad revenue. For the fourth quarter, the company is expecting revenue to rise 17%. For the full year, Netflix projecting $45 billion in revenue, a 16% jump from last year. Beauty major L'Oreal has reported 4.2% jump in overall sales on an annual basis. This was largely led by strong rebound in the North American and Chinese markets and double-digit growth in online sales. The company's sales growth also accelerated sequentially across all divisions and regions. And staying with global earnings, British bank Barclays, upping its guidance, announced a buyback of £500 million. The bank's net interest income guidance was also upgraded to more than £12.6 billion for the year. The company's pre-tax profit for the third quarter came in at £2.1 billion, marking a 7% decline from the same period in 2024. Well, the big CNBC-TV18 exclusive. All trustees have unanimously supported the reappointment of Mehli Mistry to the Tata Trusts board. Remember, Mehli Mistry was a close confidant of Ratan Tata and has been at the heart of the public battle that has broken out in the recent weeks. Sources have said that if this is approved, Mistry would also become a lifetime trustee. That's the big story there that we're tracking as far as the Tata Group is concerned. Venu Srinivasan also reappointed as a lifetime trustee. Parikshit is standing by with more. So, Venu Srinivasan and Mehli Mistry reappointed, Parikshit?
Venu Srinivasan's reappointment has been confirmed by all trustees. Just last week, the Tata Trust board, especially the Sir Dorabji Tata Trust board, had issued a circular seeking the approval of all trustees to reappoint Venu Srinivasan to the board of Tata Trusts. Now, that has happened. That process has been completed. We're told that it was yesterday when all the approvals came in, and Venu Srinivasan has been appointed Vice Chairman of Tata Trust for life, and his appointment will be renewed at the age of 75. It will be reviewed at the age of 75, to be correct. Now, as far as Mehli Mistry is concerned, his term as trustee on the Tata Trust board comes to an end on the 28th of October. So it could be within a day or two that the Tata Trust will float another circular seeking approval of all trustees. What is important to point out is that the trustee has to be reappointed unanimously. Everyone must agree. Even one vote against means that the reappointment could be stalled. So let's see what happens over the next few days. There has been a lot of tension within the Tata Trust, differences over various issues, including the public listing of Tata Sons. Let's see what happens when it comes to Mehli Mistry's reappointment.
All right. Many thanks, Parikshit, for joining us. Now, the government has framed draft rules to combat deepfakes as synthetic content impersonating prominent personalities on social media. Ashmit joins us now with the details. Ashmit, what do these draft rules entail?
Well, the government has upped the ante in its fight, I guess, as far as deepfakes is concerned. The government hugely concerned about AI-generated content, the implications that it has, the potential for misuse, what it does in case of misuse of information, what it potentially could do as far as elections are concerned, influencing elections are concerned. All of these factors weighing on the minds of the Ministry of Electronics and IT. They've come out with these draft rules, proposed rules